right, well, we are still continuing with the fact that we are at the 55th National Conference of the ANC. We do have TK Pooe with us in studio. He is a political analyst. TK, thank you very much for joining us. I wonder, we were just counting now with Braden that this conference is about 5 hours late, and you're just joining us now. Obviously, they cannot adopt credentials until everybody has registered.
No, that's very true. It's actually part and parcel of what they do. So, look, I'll probably answer it in this way, that one, we're in the 21st century. Surely this could have been done using some mechanism or some cloud technology. And two, it's a bit of a contrast too, because I was watching the Chinese Communist Party one, where everything is run into absolute precision. So, but then again, like the way you started it, this is the ANC, and this is how, unfortunately, they seem to want to run their affairs. And I guess we have nothing to do but have to wait on them to start.
Yeah, the delay causing a lot of questions, obviously, from the media, which did not impress Pooe and him insisting it's an administrative way, and that the fact that they've told the media they'll start at a particular time does not mean it's going to start at the time. But that's not the point, TK. I was thinking you have distributed nationally a program for the conference, which we received, some of us, yesterday in the media. And when we arrived here, in nice folders, it says the 8:30. You start with interfaith in the morning. 9:15, the president delivers the political report. We didn't make that time. It's the ANC itself. Does it point to a bit of disorganization? I don't want to use the word chaos. That made Pooe very angry earlier. But it looks like it's a little bit disorganized logistically. And there is load shedding, of course, which we know can affect certain electronics that you are using to register your delegates.
Well, I guess the irony would be the ANC now knows what most South Africans have to go through when we keep complaining that load shedding is affecting us, because this is what our daily lives was like. But look, I still think it's not an excuse. We have to be reminded that when the current president came into his seat, one of the key things President Ramaphosa used to stress on is we're going to change the culture of the party, and part of the culture is we're going to stick to times and we're going to actually respect people's time. So look, it really is not an excuse. Now, like I said, look, we do have to respect that, look, they are the ones who are basically running the show, but it doesn't all go well. But then also, like you say, the bigger issue is to say maybe it also is highlighting the fact that can you really run an organization when you don't have a secretary general? You don't have a deputy secretary general?
In fact, I put this question at the policy conference in July, to Paul Mashatile at the time, because he was the acting secretary general. I asked, to say, how are you going to manage logistically? You are a treasurer general, now you are the acting SG, and then the answer that was given was that, no, I've got a team of people.
Well, I guess then we're going to have to blame the team of people. But look, this is why organizations don't depend on one human being. And I always say this, the characteristic of a modern political party is that individuals are just figureheads, and it's a bigger team that does everything in the background. And the ANC doesn't seem to understand that. They still rely on an individual. Now, Mr. Mashatile might have done a great job in trying to deputize for everything, but as my sister says, you can't be deputy Jesus to everything. You eventually have to kind of say how strong is an organization, and that's the problem.
Before Masiho, you asked the question, as you spoke about modern times, should the ANC be focusing on modernization rather than renewal?
That's exactly it. I always have the argument, you can't renew that which is dead. You have to just basically come back. Only Jesus brought people back to the dead. But the modernization, I think people always take this word to mean that, oh, you mean now that we have new clothes, or we have new, I think you said, folders which they give you. Modernization speaks to the fact that does an organization, A, have a proper team in place? B, beyond looking at individuals, what is your mandate, in the sense that do you know where each and every one of your members comes from? Can you actually account for that? Can you move certain things from an analog to a digital way? And most importantly, this is a big one, can you be purely focused on saying when you come to conferences such as this, do you put your best foot forward? There's the most successful political party in the world outside of the Chinese Communist Party is the British Conservative Party. And if you know one thing about them is they are very pedantic. They're British, but they're very pedantic about how do we always make sure that every time the media is there, it's our way to communicate to the rest of not only Britain, but the world to say we are organized. And it's quite odd that you have to go back to Thabo Mbeki's era. He used to understand that. That's why he was very big on everything being organized and on time. And while Mr. Mabe might not like the criticism we're giving to him, what it's is essentially saying to people like eNCA and other international media people here is to say, here is a governing party which A, cannot control load shedding, B, cannot control the time they start their own conference. And see, to the rest of the public, it's saying, oh, we know this is the ANC. No wonder we're in this chaos that we're in.
Now, TK, let's talk about all the things that have been happening around this conference. Heading to this conference, there was a lot of drama. We saw that Section 89 report and how people voted in Parliament, right? Even ANC MPs themselves. And I want to talk to you specifically about the developments of yesterday, with the former president announcing that he is, going to privately prosecute the current president. What are the political implications, or what do you think is happening here politically? Are we being dragged into factionalism, and the fact that it's on the same time that it's announced that the Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma would also be taken to task for how she voted in Parliament?
Well, I'd answer it like this. I always say this, two things can be true at the same time. One, yes, there is a political shenanigans happening, and we cannot deny that. Look, President Jacob Zuma is the master of basically being able to take the carpet from under your feet if you think you're organized. But secondly, and this is a point I think we also have to stress, that report which you just cited did actually highlight very concerning things to, I think, the rest of the general public. So he's just using something which is very current, which is very true, and to put it into the realm of politics. Now, what we need to now wait to see is how do they respond to it. And I don't think simply, as I think the Speaker of the Chief Whip of the ANC is saying, like, this is simply shenanigans, is the right way to do it. A more nuanced way would have been to say, listen, yes, we voted this down, but moving forward, there is a case to answer for. And if the president wants to really come across as that president who said, listen, I'm here for integrity, he is going to take the nation and the ANC into his confidence and actually address each and every one of those points. But unfortunately, their failure to do this means that this issue and this pending issue from the former president, is going to become a bigger issue than it should be.
Yeah, and we have the likes of the ANC Chief Whip, Phemema Georgina, earlier. Yes. We played her bite, calling on the former president, Jacob Zuma, to literally toe the line and allow the space for the incumbent, Matamela Ramaphosa, to be president of the ANC and do his job as a leader.
Well, for once, we can't blame President Jacob Zuma on this one. And I think we have to be very clear on this one. This is a problem which is the doing of the current president. No one asked the president to get involved in allegations that that people he is associated with had money on his private property. Now, he should have learned from the former president who also had problems with his private property. So this is not an issue of President Jacob Zuma. This is clearly the issue of President Ramaphosa.
Yeah, just historically, if you look at this conference, from what you've just said in terms of leadership problems, can this ANC survive these leadership problems ahead of 2024?
By survive, you mean win an election? Possibly. But I think the bigger issue is not, for me, it's never been 2024. The bigger issue is 2029. And the fact that, listen, this is going to be, I think you're going to be over the age of 30 as an individual. Remember, we know people like your co-host here were not born in those times, and they're still young. But there is an issue of saying you're going to get to 2029 never having ever experienced apartheid. So the issue of the ANC, what it represents, means absolutely nothing to you. That's going to be the bigger issue.
And I think also there's, what people deem as something very little, TK, and I don't know if you have any thoughts around it. The by-elections in Ditsobotla and what happened there, and the seats that were taken from the ANC in that community that has suffered in terms of service delivery. We've had reporters going there showing us how badly serviced this community is. Is this also communication to the ANC of what's to come soon?
A lot of by-elections have been. There's also one in KZN where I think the DA and the IFP struck some deal for the IFP to take it. And they've actually been losing a lot in KZN. And we have to remember, KZN is different because that's where our largest voting population actually comes from. You lose KZN, you could literally be down as the ANC. But these messages have been coming. And I always say, look, the ANC is strategically deaf, to be honest. They know these things. They'll tell you these things. When you read the reports, they'll say it. But there's an inability to actually act on them.
TK, in less than a minute, how significant is this conference going to be in the history of the ANC? If you look at what happened in Polokwane, that was like some kind of a big watershed moment. Yeah. Are we in for another one this time? What's your sense?
I don't think it's as big as people make it out to be. It's only big in this regard. Who becomes vice president and who becomes secretary general? And I know people get a bit confused when I say that. Who becomes vice president has been what we call a trend, that you can win your second term as ANC president. Doesn't mean you see the election. And secondly, Mr. Ntuli is very interesting because if you speak to many...
Ntuli.
Because he is coming on the ticket of I'm independent. And many ANC, especially the old guard, have high regard for him because he represents the old ANC and possibly what the ANC of the future could look like. So that's the only reason I think it's not that important, but it's slightly important.
Okay. We'll continue, of course, our analysis here.